The judgment of mysterious Babylon. I'm going to ask Minister Yeshurun if he would read for us verse 3, just that verse only, of Revelation 17. Verse 3 of Revelation 17.
So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
Hallelujah. John says he was taken to the wilderness to see the great harlot of Babylon. The question we asked, and we've dealt with why we know that America is Babylon. In the previous lesson, if for further reference on that, you can listen to last week's lesson. It's up on YouTube right now. Go to the Apocalypse Millennial channel, and you can get the whole lesson from last week. And also, of course, we sent out the notes of part 1 and part 2 in email last week. So you should have that. All right. And so the question is not now, why is America Babylon? We've already explained that. But why is America called the wilderness in verse 3? And sometimes in history, areas that come under the rulership of a foreign nation are called a wilderness by the occupying power. For instance, Minister, could you read for us Isaiah chapter 23, verse 13 of Isaiah to illustrate this point?
Isaiah chapter 23, verse 13. Behold, the land of the Chaldeans, this people was not, till Assyrian founded it for them that dwell in the wilderness. They set up the towers thereof, they raised up the palaces thereof, and he brought to it to ruin.
All right, so in Isaiah 23:13, an area of land that was settled by the Assyrian Empire was called a wilderness area for the Chaldean people to dwell in it. And so America was a wilderness area for the Mystery Babylon system of ancient Babylon to move into. So in like manner, America is the wilderness of the ancient Babylonian mystery system embodied in the American Masonic Lodge and symbolized by the Queen of Babylon image in the Statue of Liberty in New York City. So when John is taken to the wilderness of Babylon, he says, I saw a woman sit on a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman is the city Mystery Babylon, New York. The beast she sits on or rides upon is described as a scarlet-colored beast, full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, the scarlet color of the beast means that it is an entity that is full of sin. Because we notice the word scarlet is used in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Could you read that for us, Minister? Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18.
Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. Come now, let us reason together, saith Yah. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool.
So sometimes sins is described as the color of scarlet. And we will discuss in detail in our next lesson, next Shabbat, about the meaning of the 7 heads and 10 horns of the beast. When next Shabbat, we will be reading and studying from verses 7 through 18. But today, we're going to still stay on the issue as to how did Mystery Babylon move from the plains of Shinar in Iraq and position and station itself in America. And that's going to be what we're going to be looking at today. To get an understanding of that point, how did Babylon move from where it originally was at the Tower of Babylon, when men gathered together and set up a tower in the plains of Shinar in modern day Iraq, thousands of years ago, immediately after the flood, men set up a civilization there that was in rebellion to Yah, had involved in other historical recounts its position on matters of idolatry, witchcraft, sorcery, as well as the implementation of a building project for a city that will reach up into the sky. All of these are things that have been what people call the roots of all major world civilization throughout the world. So how was it that the origins of Babylon ended up way over here from we're very far from Iraq, and Babylon civilization, Babylon culture sets itself up in America. More specifically, it sets itself up as the city of Babylon in New York City, and Babylon sets itself up as a land in the land of America. So New York City is the city of Babylon. America is the land of Babylon. And as we read last week, verse 18 of chapter 17, Minister, could you read that again for us?
You want chapter 18 of Revelation?
Chapter 17, verse 18.
Revelation chapter 17, verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
And so it's told to us that Mystery Babylon is a city in this context of chapter 17. It's a city that embodies the culture, the civilization of the ancient Babylon that was in the plains of Shinar that's described in Genesis chapter 11. We studied and read from those passages in Genesis chapter 11 that was there where they were speaking one language, then Yah intervened and broke it up by giving them different languages. And we also summed it up that if you look at New York City, it is now the headquarters of a fledgling international world government called the United Nations, which has not yet been fully empowered for rulership over the world, but according to this prophecy, one day it will be. So this prophecy is in an ongoing process of fulfillment. But the question that we're going to really look at today is, how did the civilization of Babylon in Iraq move to New York City? We already saw how when you do the Babylonian mathematical count of the word of the name New York City, letter for letter, that the term New York equals to 666. We already saw that. And we already saw that the Babylonians used 60 as their base number, also 6 as a base number. And even though our mathematical system in the West uses 10 as its base number for calculations and calculus, percentages and so forth, when it comes to keeping time, this country uses 60, like 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds to make a minute. And so there are some parts of the Babylonian mathematics that is employed here in the American civilization and culture. But the similarities between ancient Babylon being a city of one language, it parallels the way New York City with the United Nations, where the international language of all the nations is English. So internationally, as we illustrated in the airline industry. Airline pilots all have to know how to speak English, whether they're from Timbuktu, China, or any part of the world. They can't be an airline pilot unless they know how to speak English if they're international airline pilots. Because if they can't speak English, then it would be too complicated and dangerous for air traffic control towers to be able to control them how to land and take off without everybody speaking the same language. So we see that the repository of the language of English is the language of America, and it is the language of the world. So in that regard, there's that similarity as well. We pointed that out. But I would say, in answer to our main question though today, how did ancient Babylonian civilization move to America? We know that ancient Babylonian civilization, it has moved. Its aspects of its culture moved through great world powers of the past. It moved to the great world power of Greece. It moved its civilization moved to the great ancient world power of Rome. A lot of people like to think that Babylon just stopped in Rome, but it didn't. Remember now, when John is writing Revelation, Rome was in control of the world back in 95 AD. And as such, Rome was the chief city. But as you read Revelation 17, Revelation 18, there's a lot of details about the latter day mystery Babylon that Rome just doesn't fit. And yes, even having been to Rome, there have been all of these teachings. People have said that it's the city of seven hills. And I've really come to see that that really has more to do with the system of idolatry that was in it, more so than its topography, because those hills are not as evident, plainly seen as seven. In fact, people trying to make a number of hills to be that. Some of them are just elevations, and yet there's more than just those numerically. So it's a strain and a stretch to say Rome is it because it's a city of seven hills. I want to dispel that notion right away, because there's other factors we're going to later see in Revelation 17, and particularly in chapter 18, that Rome doesn't match. Rome is not the center of the international world language. It's not. But New York City is. And yes, the denomination of the Roman Catholic Church is a government. It is a legally recognized government and nation to itself. Yet it's not the kind of nation that embodies all that New York City and the land of America embody, based on these descriptions in Revelation 17 and 18. So the question again, I keep coming back to it. How did the civilization of ancient Babylon end up way over here in America, considering the case that, okay, if Rome was the greatest European power, and then Rome broke up into different pieces, then that would mean it broke up into these different city-states that form what we call Europe today. And Europe might go up in flames any moment right now as we're speaking. This thing in Ukraine, saints, you need to watch it. That could easily bring America and Russia in a war. And even something could be happening right now as we speak. So just throw that out there. Won't have time to deal in details on that. Maybe catch us on Tuesday night. We might be dealing with that a little bit. But we know that America basically is founded by nations that broke up and split out of the Roman Empire that were once part of the Roman Empire, like England, France, Spain. To them, this continent was a wilderness. It was a wilderness of the European nations. So in that sense, you can see why it's called, America is called a wilderness when John is brought there. However, we're going to look at what we just saw in Isaiah as well, the wilderness sometimes is where one nation sets up its civilization in another nation. And then the mother nation that sets it up in that other land, they call the land where they set up their settlements, they call it the wilderness. In that case, you could think of how England could call America the wilderness, because America is basically the offspring of the British Empire. So that's an example to throw out there. But yet, still, in answer to our question, how did Babylonian culture get here? What is the spiritual meaning behind it being here? Because John is told he was taken into the wilderness. And we're going to look at this. And I would say we're going to have to go to a very complex chapter to discover what this is. It's a chapter in the book of Zechariah. So I'm going to ask Minister to go to Zechariah and chapter, if you would go to Zechariah chapter 5 and read for us verse 5 through 11.
Zechariah chapter 5, verse 5 through 11. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, lift up thy eyes and see, what is this that goeth forth? And I said, what is it? And he said, this is the ephah that goeth forth. And he said, moreover, this is the remembrance through all the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is the woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. And he said, this is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted up my eyes, and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork. And he lifted up an ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, whether these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, to build it in a house in the land of Shinar. It shall be established and set there upon her own base.
Well, say some of you were with us in 2017, 2018, when we were going through the book of Zechariah and we dealt with this. So for you, it's maybe some review, because we did deal with this back about 4 years ago. Hallelujah. Time does fly, doesn't it? But in this verse, these verses, it's really in chapter 5 of Zechariah, a condemnation on a civilization that's like Babylon. Reason why chapter 5 of Zechariah is dealing with judgment on a civilization of Babylon is because it's written at a time when Hebrew exiles have just come out of captivity, out of ancient Babylon, and have moved back into the land. Zechariah, the prophet, was one of those. After the 70-year captivity in ancient Babylon, they moved to the land of Israel. Most Israelites, though, stayed in Babylon. Just like if today you and I got the message, it's time to move to Israel, most of us won't move to Israel. Most of us will stay in America because this is all we know. And we're not comfortable to going to the land of Israel. And that was the case back then. And so in chapter 5 of Zechariah, Yah's really showing the Israelites here that the reasons why you're there in ancient Babylon, you got to understand that Yah, he's telling them here, he's about to judge ancient Babylon, and that whatever benefits you think you got by staying in Nebuchadnezzar's ancient Babylon is getting ready to evaporate. So if you're just holding on to ancient Babylon for the sense of this is all I know, it's still an affluent and rich and comfortable place to live in. Well, chapter 5, Yah gives this revelation to prophet Zechariah and tells them in that time, around 536 BC, he's telling them, this place you call Babylon, this place you call your comfort zone place to live in, it's not going to be that way forever. It's getting ready. It's going to go down. And it's quite interesting because in this chapter, to illustrate this point, in chapter 5, verse 1 through 4, Minister, could you read that for us?
Zechariah?
Yes, sir. Chapter 5, verse 1 through 4.
Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1 through 4. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying unto me.
Not Revelation, I'm sorry, Zechariah. I'm sorry. I said Revelation, I meant Zechariah.
Hold on, give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1 through 4. Then I turned and lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a rolling roll, a flying roll. And he said unto me, what seest thou? And I answered, I see a flying roll, and the length thereof is 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 10 cubits. And then he said unto me, this is the curse that goeth forth over the face of the whole earth. For everyone that stealeth shall be cut off as on the side according to it, and everyone that sweareth shall be cut off as on the side according to it. And I will bring it forth, saith Yah of hosts, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that sweareth falsely by my name. It shall remain in the midst of his house, and shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof.
See, some Israelites in ancient Babylon had adapted the Babylonian culture and corruption. And this flying scroll is like a court docket with all of the record of the crimes of Babylon, of that ancient Babylon. And that the Israelites that were staying connected to the culture and civilization of ancient Babylon, they shared in its corruptions. They did as ancient Babylon did. They swear falsely. They make treaties and that they don't keep. They steal what others got. Their business is what they call venture capitalism, which means they're like scavenging other people and their resources in order to build up their resources. So basically, when it comes down to it, this prophecy is talking about America more than it is actually ancient Babylon. Because here, America is described in verse 4 or in verse 3 as people that swear falsely in verse 4 by Yah's name. Now, America claims to be, quote, a Christian nation, a Bible-believing nation. But when you look at what they do with what they call their biblical faith, they use their biblical faith to swindle people, to steal from people, and manipulate and exploit people, and to colonize people. All of that is in American history. For instance, Columbus said he's come to take over America from the indigenous people to further and advance the cause of Christianity. And then this is their means to justify the massacre and almost extermination of a whole population of indigenous people throughout the Americas. And yet they claim, oh, but we believe in Yeshua. You remember Yeshua said, there'll be many in that day who said, Master, we did this in your name. Master, we did that in your name. And he'll say, I never knew you. And we see America is touted like this, but it's been a thief. This is the way they do. They break treaties. They made treaties with the indigenous people. And they made so many treaties that they broke with the indigenous people of America. Eventually, the indigenous people of America said, white man speak with forked tongue. As you remember in the cowboy movies. He speaks with forked tongue. He speaks with a serpent tongue. You can't trust him. And that's one of the reasons we see Russia is about to invade Ukraine this week. Putin said in 1996, America said it would not incorporate any former Soviet Union states within NATO. And they said that verbally, but then in 1996, America went ahead and incorporated former Soviet Union countries into NATO. And then Russia started complaining, said, well, you said you weren't going to do that. They said, yeah, but we didn't put it in writing, so it didn't count. That's what Russia's upset about. Say y'all speak with forked tongue. You said you weren't going to do it, now here we are, we got you with weapons all around us. That's the earmark of a thief. So this culture, just like ancient Babylon was, its greatness has been on how it has exploited people. And lastly, but not leastly, look what they did to the children of Israel that they brought to this country. Oh my goodness. The most horrendous ever genocide, Holocaust of the Israelite people and blood of the Israelite people has been smeared on this continent that they set up. This civilization, they set up. This is why you and me are here. They stole us. They stole us to be here. They're thieves. You are here because you were stolen to be here. All right. Now, when you look at all of this appraisal, these descriptions in Zechariah, verse 1 through 4, Yah is taking note of, he's got this big scroll of indictments. You know, it's like a court setting. You got all this scroll of indictments, and it's a huge scroll. And it's from Yah's divine plan to destroy America. But to cap it off, why it's coming down so hard here is because what we read in verse 5 through 11, as Minister read, that the repository of the civilization that Yah hates more than any other civilization is the civilization of Babylon. They came from the time of the Tower of Babel. He has saved that land or that society, that system that resides here in America as his last whipping enemy. The last enemy he really whips them because of all of its corrupt and cruel history, but it's a long-standing feud between the society of Babylon and Yah, ever since 5,000 years ago at the Tower of Babel. So chapter 5 is talking about topping off all the other reasons why he wants to destroy Babylon, the American Babylon. He says because it has become the repository of ancient Babylonian society and system. And he illustrates it by this vision that Zechariah sees of an ephah. And we're going to go and look in this, okay? And really try our best to make it as plain and simple as possible. First of all, Zechariah has shown that Babylon has spread its wicked influence over the world through its economic power. The Masonic symbols on the dollar bill show the witchery of the demonic United States. Minister, you still got your dollar bill there?
Oh no, I don't have
okay.
no bills.
Well, he showed it last week.
Oh yeah. I can show it again. Yeah, I got you.
You want to pull it up? Just let everybody see it for a moment. And let me give you opportunity to share screen there. Okay, it's on.
All right.
All right. Okay. Now you see right here, can you bring it back to that part right there? Yeah, thanks. All right. On the dollar bill, you see the phrase, can you move it back over towards the pyramid more? Move it over. Yeah, keep moving. Yeah, right there. You see right here, it says, and next to this is where it says, could you move a little more back the other way, just so we can see the writing next to this. It says in what? In God we trust. And then it's right next to this I in the capstone. Now, according to historical records, that I in the capstone over here, that I in the capstone is the eye of Baal. That was the god of ancient Babylon. Minister, could you read for us Jeremiah chapter 50? Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 1 and 2.
Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 1 and 2. The word that Yahweh spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare ye among the nations, and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal not, and say, Babylon is taken, Baal is confounded, Merodach is broken into pieces. Her idols are confounded, her images are broken into pieces.
Now notice Baal is the god of Babylon, and it was known in ancient times to be symbolized by the eye that you see in the capstone on the back of the dollar bill. All right, so this represents the witchery of the American economic system that has exploited the world through its venture capitalism throughout the world. Destroyed nations, destroyed the earth, corrupted and polluted the earth with its devastating greed, and yet doing it all under the guise that they're a God-fearing nation, as they say, swearing falsely. And on the back of the dollar bill, next to the capstone, you can see who that real God is. It's clear evidence of the transference of ancient Babylonian mystery religion to America's money and capitalistic economic system that has corrupted all the earth. This is that golden cup mentioned in Revelation 17 that America's made all the world drink from, for just as there is America's international language is the world language, which is English. The world's international money is the American dollar bill. So that all is involved in this too. The so-called petrodollar. Now in Zechariah chapter 5, what's interesting, the Babylonian economic sorcery is described in verse 7 as an ephah, which is a measuring container with a lead weight that was used in ancient Babylon's weights and measurements for processing and determining price values of items that were sold in their economic exchange. That's why the symbol that you see on Wall Street, or the symbol for the U.S. Treasury, is a woman with balances, like, for economic weights and measurements, for prices, which are going up too high right now as it is. We got a lot of inflation now, but some people getting rich from that. And it's not most of us, you can be sure of that. But they managed to calculate this system in such a way that only a small percentage of people really benefit from the profits economically. And so Zechariah sees a woman in the ephah in verse 7. And he's told that the woman is wickedness. And then in Revelation 17:18, it reveals that the woman in the ephah is the demonic economic system of the city of the mystery religion of Babylon, which is now based in New York City, because the economic hub of the world is Wall Street. That's the international world economic center, and market is the stock market on Wall Street. That's the engine that runs the whole world economy right there. It is therefore that nation, that economic system is described as this woman, which is a city which represents Babylon, New York. It says it's full of wickedness. And then verse 8 of chapter 5 says, he said, this is wickedness. He cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. That's the economic system. Then lifted I up my eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women. The wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, whither do they bear these? He said, and in the King James it says, he said to me, to build in a house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon our own base. But in the Septuagint, which is an older translation by 1,000 years than this translation in the KJV, it doesn't say to build it a place in Shinar. It just says to build it a place in Babylon, which is to say that when you see the two women with the wings and like storks, these are represent demonic entities called sirens. They're described as looking like that. These are demonic entities. And I want to tell you, ever since I saw that demonic entity that was in Vila Asia's matzo ball pot that day, you can believe there are entities like that. They look like hybrids of what I would call the demonic realm and the human realm. And they're there. This is through genetic mixing. That capability Satan has had. So this is something that's like frightening, but if you saw the picture we saw of that entity that came by that we saw last Passover, you can see how Satan and them can manipulate genetically. But what it's illustrating is there's demonic forces that wanted to take up what was the ancient Babylonian system in ancient Iraq and move it to the wilderness of America and place it in New York City, which is now the woman in the ephah. Any questions anybody had? Because I know that's kind of complicated how I explained that. And I just want to make sure you're clear why we're saying how the economic civilization system of ancient Babylon moved to New York City. Because it doesn't say to build it a place for itself in Shinar, which would be in Iraq. In the Septuagint, it says to Babylon. And when you look at New York City in its skyline, what stands out prominently is the statue of a woman, a huge statue of a woman that sits on her base, on her place in the Hudson River, right at Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty. And it's interesting that just right, the beach right across from it, that's on Long Island, there's a little village right there on the beach of Long Island, right there at where the Statue of Liberty is. And there's a little village there called Babylon, New York. How did that get there? I don't know.
Statue of Liberty is a sin.
Yes.
That's what it stands for.
Yep.
That you can come here and commit any sin you want.
Yep. All of this is what we're explaining as to why New York City is Babylon, according to Revelation chapter 17. Now, John further describes the harlot. It's called a harlot. You know, like a prostitute. It sells itself out to the highest bidder. That's what the stock market is. There's no limit on what other nations can spend to buy into it, whether they're enemies of America or not. One of the biggest investors in America is China. Notice it says the woman was arrayed in purple in verse 4. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet color of Revelation 17. Minister, could you read for us Revelation 17, verse 4?
Revelation chapter 17, verse 4. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication.
All right. Now, if she's arrayed in purple and scarlet color, that means she's very attractive. That is, and she's decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. That's representing her economy. So her economy is very attractive to get involved with. And she has a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. But that's just the thing. Anybody who invests with her, here's what she does. When you start becoming dependent on her economy, when you start having to depend on her money, here's what she does to you in terms of other countries. She will then say, well, you really like all this money I'm giving you? You really like these investments I'm doing from you? Well, we demand that your city, your country, your civilization must become like our civilization. If we promote transgender, homosexual activity in our country, then if you don't start doing the same in your country, we will bankrupt your country and you will fall. And you leaders of these little weak third world countries, you have to sell out to remain in power to us. And you have to allow homosexuality, transgender, and all the immorality that we do to be free to be done where you are. This is why we know there's a lot of countries in Africa start dealing with China, because China will come in there and build up all kinds of things and invest, but they're not asking those countries to be like China. Because China's looking to make money. They don't care what you do in your own country. It is trying. Whereas America, once they invest in your country, in return, they want to use your country to bring their values, their immorality, and their wickedness. This is why a lot of countries in Africa have had problems. This is why some of their leaders have been taken down, because they became addicted to the American economy. The American economy is corruption, is so pervasive in the world that now, as Russia's about to invade Ukraine, America is saying to Russia, look, if you invade Ukraine, we're going to pull all your money, we're going to put all these economic sanctions on you, like they put on Iran. And one of the reasons Putin didn't really say, I don't care anymore, is because he understands and knows that if he don't make a stand, they're moving into all them countries around Russia to take him out. He knows that. Because this nation is a nation that feels its stuff don't stink, that it's God's gift to the world. And really it's the devil's corruption to the world. Because that eye in the capstone on the back of the dollar bill, that's not the eye of Yah. That's the eye of Lucifer. That's who the god of Babylon was. Baal is Lucifer. That's what you have to understand and know. And there's some countries that said we done had enough. And I must say, what is the forecast for what's going to happen to Russia? Eventually, Russia's going, they're going to replace Putin one day. They're going to replace him, and they're going to have a government set up that will be entrapped to the wicked system of Babylon. It's coming. And what we read in verse 5 of chapter 17 is, it says, upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So she uses her economic system to corrupt all the world. She uses her economic system to preach its values to all the world through CNN. All over the world, CNN is promoting transgender, homosexual values, fornication values all over the world. Because all the nations of the world are getting the influence through CNN. And I want to commend the president of Kenya. The president of Kenya is trying to fight that. He's trying to build inroads with China. The president of Uganda, likewise, Museveni, the president that was a president of Uganda when I was living in Africa. They said they didn't had enough, but the sad fact of the matter, there's one other president of an African nation named Gaddafi that saw this corruption, and Gaddafi told all of the African nations, he said, look, y'all, we got all the resources. We got gold, diamond, oil, all the rich minerals of the whole world are here. Yeah, we don't control it. Let's form our own dollar bill, so to say, and make our own money, just like the Europeans did with the euro. Do you know what happened? There was a Secretary of State of the United States named Hillary Clinton at that time. And Hillary Clinton came to our homeboy Obama, who was the president. He was too nice to really be strong. And I think he may have had a broken wrist here, there. I don't know, that's speculation, but she said, you got to go take Gaddafi out. And he went ahead and did it because he was a lackey to the whore Babylon. That's pure and simple. He wasn't for you and me. He wasn't no Hebrew. Obama's a Hamite. Anyway, I don't want to get caught up into that. But anyway, you know, and she got it where they went in and America had Gaddafi killed and spread confusion to his country. We've seen confusion now. All the confusion you see in Syria was set up by her. Hillary Clinton was one of the biggest examples of Mystery Babylon. And she has nerve enough to think she can become the president in 2024. She ain't giving up. And guess what state she represents? New York. She was New York senator. Well, I tell you, when Putin saw what they did in Syria, what they did in Libya, Putin said, uh-oh, they're coming to get me. And that's when he went ahead and invaded Crimea because he knew they was coming to get that. And not that I'm an admirer of Putin, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying I can see why he's doing what he's doing right now. He don't have no choice. He's saying they're coming against Russia, but he know they're coming to get him too. You see? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we got to look at the reality of the world of this harlot. And upon her head was written, Mystery Babylon, the great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken, verse 6, with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahshua. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. I wanted to get something clear here. John is not amazed with admiration at the wickedness of what he sees in America. What John was amazed about is the inconsistent, oppressive behavior of this supposed Bible-based nation. And rather than being favorably impressed with it, when the phrase is used, I wondered with great admiration, he's basically saying he's absolutely amazed at its hypocritical wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
Just absolutely hypocritical wickedness. How they can justify enslaving you and me, because they said we were under the curse of Ham. And now the DNA has come out of what the ancient Canaanite DNA was, that was dug up in ancient Canaanite settlements in Tel Megiddo. And when they dug it up, the Canaanites had European DNA, R1A, R1AB. It's ancient Eurasian DNA. It had nothing to do with Hebrew E1B1As. It had nothing to do with our DNA. You see, that's how she lied. She could take the Bible and oppress Yah's chosen people. She could give them the slave Bible while they were slaves, tear out sections from that Bible that explain who they are and give the answers as to why they are in the predicament. And then use the Bible against them till young men like Prince Tawee, who don't know any better, think the New Testament is an enslavement tool to the mind of us. We don't realize it's the truth of the mind that sets us free, because Revelation is in the New Testament. It exposes this wickedness. You see what I'm saying? That's why John is amazed. He said, I looked at them with admiration. How can they say?
Hey, Elder.
Go ahead, Minister.
Hey, well, John the Revelator was trying to explain the Statue of Liberty and the vision he was seeing.
Yep.
I got another picture I want to show you.
Okay, you still got it. Go ahead.
When I pull the picture, read Revelation 17 and 4 again. Because he's trying to explain what he's seeing.
And the woman was raised.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Yep. You know, you look at that. They claim this is the statue for liberty, and yet all it became for the Hebrews was not the land of the brave, but the land of the slave. Wall Street's economy is based around the money that they gained through free labor all them hundreds of years through our ancestors. And yet they got nerve to say they are the land of liberty. It's amazing.
And what's sad is that, or like Prince Dawid, come on, man, this book make us free.
Yeah.
You see this? You can't make this up.
Nope. This is how the devil has managed, because they see that these people who exploited us clutch and cling to the New Testament. But the reality is, if you look at the slave Bible that they gave to the Hebrews to read, there is no book of Revelation in the slave Bible, New Testament. They tore that out. Yeah. They didn't want you reading that. They tore. I got a slave Bible. Some of you got it. You look at what books are in it, you'll see there is no revelation in the slave Bible, New Testament.
Yeah, why would they have something that ain't true?
Yep.
That don't make no sense.
Yeah.
That's made up, as he was saying.
Yeah. See, this is why we got to pray for our brothers. I can understand bitterness, but hey, you got to understand these things had already been foretold. Minister, I'm going to ask you to read something else for me. In verse 4, where it says, Babylon is described as being exquisitely well-dressed, meaning it's prospering in its wickedness. Her wicked, profane immorality and deviance while prospering is described in verse 4 as being like a golden cup that tempts other nations to partake of her corrupt culture. Minister, could you read for us Jeremiah 51, verse 7? Jeremiah 51, verse 7.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, verse 7. Babylon had been a golden cup in Yah's hand that made all the earth drunken, and the nations have drunken of her wine. Therefore, the nations are mad.
See, the nations of the world took her money, but they didn't realize it came with the cost of taking their values. And their values are corrupting the world. This is why Obama told the African nations, well, if y'all don't do this for the gay agenda, we're going to stop foreign aid with you. And see, I know my brothers over there, they're barely making it. You see how easy it is for them to be bought out and sold out to the corrupt values they know better than. So Babylon has been a golden cup that has made all the earth drunk. Therefore, the nations are mad. Okay, Revelation 17, verse 5 calls them Mystery Babylon. And it calls New York the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. A lot of people would say, well, that can't be New York because the abominations of the earth did not start in New York. There have been abominations in the earth for centuries. Yeah, but there's different terminology. There's different concepts behind the word mother. I remember when Saddam Hussein threatened America when it was about to invade Iraq in 2003. He said, if you invade us, it will be the mother of all wars. Well, he's not saying that war will be the first war in the history of the world. It's just saying it will be the greatest war of all time. The mother of all wars. Ain't that a mother? You know how people use that phrase? Ain't that a mother? Saying, look at that. That's the sense of mother here. And she is the greatest manifestation of the corrupt values of ancient Tower of Babel civilization, even worse than the ancient Tower of Babylon, because yes, they did do human sacrifices historically at the Tower of Babel, but this nation kills babies through abortion more than any nation ever in the history of the world, more than even the killing of ancient babies to gods and goddesses. This country has killed more innocent babies. And they make it where, if you want to keep getting our money around the world, you got to make your nation a killing field for babies through abortions. So all of these things describe it. Then it says she is drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua. That's talking about you and me, our ancestors. You see, because our ancestors' blood through the transatlantic slave trade and through the persecutions and sufferings of this world, this country is drunk with the blood of our ancestors. And even there, the record of many of our great witnesses and teachers and proclaimers of Yeshua having been cut down. Dr. King was a proclaimer. He was shot down. But there's the record of countless others. I've seen it. I've been to places where during slavery, if you were a minister teaching and preaching the truth, they would kill you. Frederick Douglass talked about that. He said they didn't mind you being sports stars, killing one another. But it's when he said he noticed people were teaching each other the Bible, where they could read and reason. They would have their Bible studies rated during slavery. Not only that, people would be killed, families would be separated over the Bible. There's countless records of this that have been suppressed. So people can't see literally how much blood was shed among our ancestors who were Bible believers in Yeshua. Because those kind of believers of our people, those people were people like Harriet Tubman. They were people like Marcus Garvey. They were people like Frederick Douglass, M.L. King. They could grasp the Bible from another angle of truth that the slave master didn't want you to know about. Mm-hmm. That was people like Sojourner Truth. All these kind of people. Don't even get me to start talking about Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosper. See what I'm saying is these are witnesses of the blood of saints. These are witnesses of the martyrs of Yeshua, because we know that Denmark Vesey, Gabriel Prosper, Nat Turner were all preachers of the gospel of Yeshua, but they also knew that we are the children of Israel too. And they suffered for that. And after that, they had it where, particularly after the rebellion of Nat Turner, they had it where at any time a preacher of the slaves preached to other slaves, the slave master's pastor had to be present to monitor it. And so our people, and I know this from the testimony of my grandfather, whose grandfather was a preacher in the time of slavery. He said they would have to go out in the fields. They would have to talk as what they called whispering preachers. That means the truth they had couldn't be said publicly in the presence of the slave master's pastor. But they had to sing cold songs like "Steal Away, steal away, steal away home," into the cornfields and the patches in secret. It's such a time, such a place to hear truth. These are the martyrs. These were killed. The blood they shed is on the register of Yah's indictment that Zechariah saw as a flying scroll that's on the docket of heaven to destroy Babylon. So the word mother here means mystery Babylon. Babylon's greatness is its greatness for wickedness. And it is drunk with the blood of the saints of the children of Israel, the Hebrew martyrs of Yeshua. John was amazed at the inconsistent, oppressive behavior of this supposed Bible-based nation. And he wasn't favorably impressed with it. He was just absolutely amazed at the wickedness.